Hello and welcome to this exploring session, and today we are beginning our journey through the true chronicle history of King Leir and his three daughters, Gonorill, Ragan and Cordella. It is a play from around 1590. It's probably one of the Queen's Men's plays, and it's part of a boom in history plays that are occurring. And it's important to remind you, the listeners and viewers at home, as well as the room, that this is very much a history play. It is based on what was considered by most people to be true events of kings and queens of English history, and it is important to remember that that therefore does not mean that this story is going to have an unhappy ending, and that this entertainment is perhaps different to other entertainments that are available. So with that in mind, to guide us through and discover how this particular entertainment functions, we have a resounding group, an exciting group of readers for you today who will be performing in some cases sight unseen, this text for you. So in no particular order, reading Cornwall today is
David Findlay. I am a cavalcade.
And performing the part of Mumford, Sans Any Sons, is
I'm Simon Nader. Hello, I'm an actor, director and writer and cavalcade.
Performing the part of Gonorill is
me, Sarah Blake. I'm an actor, writer and director living in Germany.
And performing the part of Ragan is
hello, I'm Helen Good and I'm a historian.
Reading the part of King Leir himself is
hello, I'm Pamela Flanagan. I'm an actor in London.
And taking on the role of Cordella is
hi, I'm Tamara. I'm also an actor and usually also based in London, except not now because I'm in Germany.
Reading the part of Cambria is
Liza Graham, actor, singer and Renaissance text coach in London.
Taking on all the other very vital roles in the piece, noble, servant and Gallian king is
hi, I'm Alan Scott. I've never earned a living from acting.
And reading the soon-to-be-decided correct pronunciation, Skalliger, is
I'm Keith Hill. I'm a London-based actor, director and caffeine addict.
And reading the part of Perillus is
hi, I'm Victoria. I'm an actor and I'm also based in London.
And I am your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be reading very occasional stage directions and generally trying to keep this group of reprobates in order. Yes, like that's going to happen. So we begin this play and scene one. There is no indication of act divisions. There are just scenes, and we hope to get through about 10 scenes today before we take a break. So let us open with King Leir and his various nobles.
Thus to our grief the obsequies performed of our too late deceased and dearest queen, whose soul I hope, possessed of heavenly joys, doth ride in triumph mongst the cherubims. Let us request your grave advice, my lords, for the disposing of our princely daughters, for whom our care is specially employed, as nature bindeth to advance their states in royal marriage with some princely mates. For wanting now their mother's good advice, under whose government they have received a perfect pattern of a virtuous life, lest, as it were, a ship without a stern, or silly sheep without a pastor's care, although ourselves do dearly tender them, yet are we ignorant of their affairs. For fathers best do know to govern sons, but daughters' steps the mother's counsel turns. A son we want for to succeed our crown, and course of time hath cancelled the date of further issue from our withered loins. 1 foot already hangeth in the grave, and age hath made deep furrows in my face. The world of me, I of the world am weary, and I would fain resign these earthly cares and think upon the welfare of my soul, which by no better means may be effected than by resigning up the crown from me in equal dowry to my daughters 3.
A worthy care, my liege, which well declares the zeal you bear unto our quondam queen. And since your grace hath licensed me to speak, I censure thus. Your majesty, knowing well what several suitors your princely daughters have, to make them each a jointure more or less as is their worth to them that love profess.
No more, nor less, but even all alike. My zeal is fixed, all fashioned in one mould. Wherefore unpartial shall my censure be, both old and young alike. Both old and young shall have alike for me.
My gracious lord, I heartily do wish that God had lent you an heir indubitate, which might have set upon your royal throne when fate should loose the prison of your life, by whose succession all this doubt might cease, and as by you, by him we might have peace. But after wishes ever come too late, and nothing can revoke the course of fate. Wherefore, my liege, my censure deems it best to match them with some of your neighbour kings, bordering within the bounds of Albion, by whose united friendship this our state may be protected against all foreign hate.
Herein, my lords, your wishes sought with mine, and mine, I hope, do sought with heavenly powers. For at this instant 2 near neighbouring kings of Cornwall and of Cambria motion love to my 2 daughters, Gonorill and Ragan. My youngest daughter, fair Cordella, vows no liking to a monarch unless love allows. She is solicited by diverse peers, but none of them her partial fancy hears. Yet, if my policy may her beguile, I'll match her to some king within this isle, and so establish such a perfect peace as fortune's force shall ne'er prevail to cease.
Of us and ours, your gracious care, my lord, deserves an everlasting memory to be enrolled in chronicles of fame by never-dying perpetuity. Yet, to become so provident a prince, lose not the title of a loving father. Do not force love where fancy cannot dwell, lest streams being stopped above the banks do swell.
I am resolved, and even now my mind doth meditate a sudden stratagem, to try which of my daughters loves me best, which till I know I cannot be in rest. This granted, when they jointly shall contend, each to exceed the other in their love, then at the vantage will I take Cordella, even as she doth protest she loves me best. I'll say, then, daughter, grant me one request, to show thou lovest me as thy sisters do, accept a husband whom myself will woo. This said, she cannot well deny my suit, although, poor soul, her senses will be mute. Then will I triumph in my policy, and match her with a king of Brittany.
Out of them before and bewray your secrecy.
Thus fathers think their children to beguile, and oft times themselves do first repent, when heavenly powers do frustrate their intent.
Okay, we'll just briefly pause there to recap what's going on. So, King Leir, you've got a cunning plan, and you know you're explaining your cunning plan to everyone well in advance. This is a good general counsel of things. What's been going on in this scene that we have in front of us? Someone pray see what's going on.
The Queen's dead.
Mm-hmm.
King has no son but 3 daughters, all unmarried. Or are they married?
All unmarried, I think.
All unmarried.
Unmarried.
And he's given up his kingdom as dowry for them.
Mm.
He's going to divide it equally between the 3 of them.
I mean, this all seems like perfectly reasonable forward planning. I think it seems like a perfectly reasonable plan to me.
The Emperor Charles V abdicated.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Lear's coming across as, you know, wise, kindly chap.
Well, until he says he's going to test their love for him.
Yeah, funnily enough, that wasn't his original idea, though, was it?
No.
It's Skalliger who comes up with the daft idea, and everybody argues it down. And then suddenly at the last minute, Leir goes, well, I've always wanted Cordella to marry the Duke of Brittany, but she won't marry anyone she doesn't care for. So I'm going to trick her into it by running this love competition. So he sort of takes Skalliger's idea and twists it to his own idea of getting Cordelia married off to a balancing local magnate.
Yes, but then Skalliger has some second devious plot in order to undermine his original devious plot. And Leir doesn't think that his devious plot is going to work anyway, because heavenly powers are going to frustrate it. I got a little lost in that last speech, I must admit.
That final speech was interesting because he just suddenly seemed to basically undermine everything that he'd just been plotting. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to do this. Yeah, but it probably won't work because this never works out when fathers do this to their kids.
Well, because Skalliger's acting like a vice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He even has a name like a vice. I mean, you know, that's not the name you give. If we're going for nominative determinism, if you name your child Skalliger, you're just going scallywag. It's not a good name.
No.
Well, yeah, I've made the mistake of reading the next act, so I sort of know why. But
hush.
No spoilers.
I no spoilers. It does occur to me that Leir keeps calling himself a bit of a silly old buffer. He says, I don't really understand daughters. That was my wife's sort of province, silly old me. And you sort of get the feeling that you do rather wonder whether he's putting it on in order to draw people out as to what they want going on. And one could imagine if one spent enough time with this in a rehearsal room, you ask every noble on the stage, what does it mean to you when there's no longer one king? And they've all got their own ideas. So Leir suggests a straightforward division. Skalliger suggests giving everything to the most loving, or more to the more loving. And then Leir sort of takes one idea and bends it and says, well, this is the way to force Cordella to marry somebody.
It's also interesting that we have three councillors here who are making speeches, and for those of us who've done Gorboduc, this feels very familiar, actually, having three councillors chatting to the king about the division of a kingdom. So there is a real sort of echo there. I mean, you're right. Leir's sudden. He does sudden. You know, he talks about silly sheep without a pastor's care. But yeah, I doth meditate a sudden stratagem. My zeal is fixed. There's lots of little things in there that are really interesting. And yeah, but Skalliger. I mean, it's interesting. Skalliger doesn't say a lot, but he does sort of impress himself on us remarkably quickly. Do we think Skalliger's last line is to them or as an aside?
I notice it's prose.
Leir's last line only makes sense if he's overheard Skalliger, but if he did, why wouldn't he take steps to keep him there and not let him go? It's puzzling.
We've had the odd aside, which is sort of an overheard aside or not quite an aside or has a double meaning before, so maybe it's one of those ambiguousy things.
There was one thing that struck me right in the beginning of Leir's first speech, which I think is simply the way that words have changed meaning over time. In the second line, of our too late deceased and dearest queen, which in a modern sense could be interpreted as, oh God, she went on far too long. But I don't think that's the meaning that's intended here.
No, I think it means too recently.
That's what I think it is on reflection. But I think
still raw.
A lot of people who hear it now might take the opposite view.
Other thoughts about this first scene before we I kind of think we should move a little further into the narrative before we should predict any Any additional thoughts? Yeah, Liza?
I just like that there's a reference to a queen. I like that there is this absent family member. Leir looked to her clearly for guidance for her children, but you have to ask, to what degree was she running the kingdom?
Well, it's one of those interesting things about when you lose someone who's a vital part of your life, is it actually affects your memory in weird ways as well, because you outsource parts of your memory to other people if they do little jobs or certain activities. So you suddenly find not only do you not know how certain things happen in a household, but you actually start sometimes you just forget things because you don't have that support. So maybe that's part of his that's part of the logic of some of his speeches.
It's worse than that. When I shouldn't bring people in, but I've started, so I've got to finish. When my mother died, I discovered my father didn't know when my birthday was.
Yeah.
Which is this.
Yeah.
He doesn't know when his daughter's birthdays are. That was her business.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move forward into scene 2. They're all relatively short scenes. There's a lot of scenes in this place. So this scene, however, features initially Gonorill and Ragan.
I marvel, Ragan, how you can endure to see that proud, pert Pete, our youngest sister, so slightly to account of us, her elders, as if we were no better than herself. We cannot have a quaint device so soon, or new-made fashion of our choice invention. But if she like it, she will have the same, or study newer to exceed us both. Besides, she is so nice and so demure, so sober, courteous, modest, and precise, that all the court hath work enough to do to talk how she exceedeth me and you.
What should I do? Would it were in my power to find a cure for this contagious ill. Some desperate medicine must be soon applied to dim the glory of her mounting fame. Else erst belong she'll have both prick and praise, and we must be set by for working days. Do you not see what several choice of suitors she daily hath, and of the best degree? Say amongst all she hap to fancy one, and have a husband, when, as we have none, why then by right to her we must give place, though it be ne'er so much to our disgrace.
By my virginity, rather than she shall have a husband before me, I'll marry one or other in his shirt. And yet I have made half a grant already of my goodwill unto the King of Cornwall.
Swear not so deeply, sister. Here cometh my Lord Skalliger. Something in his hasty coming doth import.
And indeed, here enters Skalliger.
Sweet princesses, I am glad I met you here so luckily, having good news which doth concern you both and craveth speedy expedition.
For God's sake, tell us what it is, my lord. I am with child until you utter it.
Madam, to save your longing, this it is. Your father in great secrecy today told me he means to marry you out of hand unto the noble prince of Cambria, you, madam, to the king of Cornwall's grace. Your younger sister he would fain bestow upon the rich king of Hibernia, but that he doubts she hardly will consent, for hitherto she ne'er could fancy him. If she do yield, why then between you three he will divide his kingdom for your dowries. But yet there is a further mystery, which so you will conceal, I will disclose.
Whate'er thou speakst to us, kind Skalliger, think that thou speakst it only to thyself.
He earnestly desireth for to know which of you three do bear most love to him, and on your loves he so extremely dotes, as never any did I think before, he presently doth mean to send for you, to be resolved of this tormenting doubt. And look whose answer pleaseth him the best, they shall have most unto their marriages.
Oh, that I had some pleasing mermaid's voice, for to enchant his senseless senses withal.
For he supposeth that Cordella will, striving to go beyond you in her love, promise to do whatever he desires. Then he will straight enjoin her for his sake the Hibernian king in marriage for to take. This is the sum of all I have to say, which being done, I humbly take my leave, no doubt, not doubting but your wisdoms will foresee what course will best unto your good agree.
Thanks, gentle Skalliger. Thy kindness undeserved shall not be unrequited if we live.
And exit Skalliger.
Now have we for fit occasion offered us to be revenged upon her unperceived.
Nay, our revenge we will inflict on her shall be accounted piety in us. I will so flatter with my doting father, as he were ne'er so flattered in his life. Nay, I will say, that if it be his pleasure to match me with a beggar, I will yield. For why, I know whatever I will say, he means to match me with the Cornwall king.
I'll say the like, for I am well assured whate'er I say to please the old man's mind, who dotes as if he were a child again, I shall enjoy the noble Cambrian prince. Only to feed his humour will suffice to say I am content with anyone whom he appoint me. This will please him more than ere Apollo's music pleased Jove.
I smile to think in what a woeful plight Cordella will be when we answer thus. For she will rather die than give consent to join in marriage with the Irish king. So will our father think. She loveth him not, because she will not grant to his desire, which we will aggravate in such bitter terms, that he will soon convert his love to hate. For he, you know, is always in extremes.
Not all the world could lay a better plot. I long till it be put in practice.
And they exit. End of scene. Lots of interesting things there. It's sort of game of two halves. You know, the sisters alone, and then what Skalliger is doing. It's interesting. Not only asking the question of how accurate is what Skalliger's saying, but the fact that they get forewarned of the contest to come. In plot terms, and knowing all of that. How accurate was Skalliger in what he reported there?
I got really confused.
Not at all.
Because, sorry, Helen, go on.
Well, it's Brittany that the
Yes.
Yeah,
the
that's
king
what I was
is
going to say.
keen on. Not Ireland.
Yes, I have a slight query here about the text, because Leir says a king of Brittany, not the Duke of Brittany.
Yes.
And I wonder whether some editor hasn't tidied up a spelling of Britain.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Brittany is the rhyme, but I think if it didn't need it for the rhyme, Keith, you'll know, or Helen, you'll know, was the concept of Britain a fixed thing at this time? Was it...
It was a political hot potato about if one had been writing this play in, say, 1603, it would have been a political hot potato because of the project of Britain that came in with James I and was terribly unpopular.
But it does turn up as a concept in certainly in Gorbodoc and other things, so it's not a completely but what its bounds are, I don't know.
Yeah.
So even though Ireland and Scotland are independent kingdoms at this time, the kings of them are still kings in Britain.
No, not Ireland.
Is Ireland not a British isle?
No.
Ireland.
No, never.
Great Britain even, isn't it?
Britain is England, Wales, Scotland. Ireland is different. Even then. It was a joint monarchy.
So lots of interesting questions there. So let's go down to character. So Gonorill and Ragan, before the entrance of Skalliger, you're not keen on your sister, are you?
Nope.
No.
Well, she's a
Cinderella.
devious little.
David, I was coming to the same conclusion. I was waiting for the fairy godmother and the white mice.
Yeah.
The glory of her mounting fame. She'll have both. I have to say, it was set by for working days. You know, the image of Sunday best.
This seems like a pretty hilarious example of what a male playwright thinks women argue about. They're like, oh my God, if we get something fashionable, she gets it too, and she gets a better one. It's absolutely Mean Girls. One thing that they are, in a sense, that perhaps an Elizabethan person would recognize them being concerned about is that Cordelia might be married before either of them. It was absolutely accepted practice for eldest daughters to be married first.
And also, married women took precedence over unmarried.
And you know, Gonorill swearing by my virginity, which is an interesting element there. Before it stirred up even further by Skalliger's entrance, and you know, you get the impression he knows exactly which buttons to be pushing here. You know, and he's giving them preparation, the prepping time here. And the moment he gives them that information, that's when they really start laying it into Dad as well. The old man's mind, as if he were a child again, always in extremes. They don't have a desperately high opinion of Dad either.
Well, he plays favourites with his children. Doesn't make you popular with the other children.
Yeah. Any other thoughts about this scene?
I have a question. Oh, no.
Go for it.
Sorry, please.
I have a question about... I can't find it now. There was a line when... No, I've lost my place. When Ragan was talking and she said something about... she was desperate to know what he was going to say. She's like, I am with child until you utter it. Was that a common turn of phrase?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Men used it too.
Okay.
But the interesting thing is that at the end of the scene, she says, I long till it be put in patience. And if you were, in this era, longing was a thing used of the cravings of pregnant women.
Okay.
So who knows what she and Cambria have been up to.
So much for virginity.
Yeah. There's you know, those sort of open protestations. You're wondering whether there's something more going on underneath. Simon, you wanted to say something?
It was just a comment on the structurally. It was a nice counterbalance. You said about what the first scene was kind of quite nice, no matter what we might think of Leir maybe putting his daughters against each other. But you see a kind of a wise king obviously has counsel. Someone commented on the number of counsellors that were talking, plus the wife, which we can say maybe we alluded to as being a steadying influence. So you have a kind of possibility of a good king, perhaps. Maybe not a great father, but a good king, and then immediately counterbalanced by this evil scheming. I think it's lovely to have that immediately, whereas many plays will have a lot of court stuff, and then you might get some plot, whereas immediately here, the attention goes to what will happen with the daughters, and I just think that's very good to get into very quickly.
Yeah, it's already presenting quite a complex court picture here of different factions.
Yeah,
already, even before we've got to factionalism, there are factions already. You know, the things that will actually exacerbate factions. The factions already exist.
Crucially, at a human level as well, rather than just a familial level. So I think that leads to wanting to know what's going to happen if you don't already, of course.
I suspect many people don't. So that's what's lovely about this play. Even, you know, some people just haven't read up on their history, so don't know where this is going. Any final quick thoughts before we go into the next slightly longer scene? Okay, let's move forward into scene 3, and Leir chatting to another. Yes, he's had some lines already, but not very many. So, and he's not going to be on stage for a while before he nips straight back out again. Enter Leir and Perillus.
Perillus, go seek my daughters. Will them immediately come and speak with me?
I will, my gracious lord.
Exit Perillus.
Oh, what a combat feels my panting heart, twixt children's love and care of common weal. How dear my daughters are unto my soul, none knows but he that knows my thoughts and secret deeds. Ah, little do they know the dear regard wherein I hold their future state to come, when they securely sleep on beds of down. These aged eyes do watch for their behalf, while they like wanton sport in youthful toys. This throbbing heart is pierced with dire annoys. As doth the sun exceed the smallest star, so much the father's love exceeds the child's. Yet my complaints are causeless, for the world affords not children more affords not children more conformable, and yet, methinks, my mind presageth still, I know not what, and yet I fear some ill.
And here re-enters Perillus with the 3 daughters.
Well, here my daughters come. I have found out a present means to rid me of this doubt.
Our royal lord and father, in all duty we come to know the tenor of your will. Why you so hastily have sent for us?
Dear Gonorill, kind Ragan, sweet Cordella, ye flourishing branches of a kingly stock, sprung from a tree that once did flourish green, whose blossoms now are nipped with winter's frost, and pale grim death doth wait upon my steps, and summons me unto his next Azizes. Therefore, dear daughters, as ye tender the safety of him that was the cause of your first being, resolve a doubt which much molests my mind. Which of you 3 to me would prove most kind? Which loves me most, and which at my request will soonest yield unto their father's hest?
I hope my gracious father makes no doubt of any of his daughters' love to him. Yet, for my part, to show my zeal to you, which cannot be in windy words rehearsed, I prize my love to you at such a rate, I think my life inferior to my love. Should you enjoin me for to tie a millstone about my neck and leap into the sea at your command, I willingly would do it. Yea, for to do you good, I would ascend the highest turret in all Brittany, and from the top leap headlong to the ground. Nay more, should you appoint me for to marry the meanest vassal in the spacious world, without reply, I would accomplish it. In brief, command whatever you desire, and if I fail, no favour I require.
Oh, how thy words revive my dying soul.
Oh, how I do abhor this flattery.
But what saith Ragan to her father's will?
Oh, that my simple utterance could suffice to tell the true intentions of my heart, which burns in zeal of duty to your grace, and never can be quenched but by desire to show the same in outward forwardness. Oh, that there were some other maid that durst but make a challenge of her love with me. I'd make her soon confess she never loved her father half so well as I do you. I then my deeds should prove in plainer case how much my zeal aboundeth to your grace. But for them all let this one means suffice, to ratify my love before your eyes. I have right noble suitors to my love, no worse than kings, and happily I love one. Yet, would you have me make my choice anew, I'd bridle fancy and be ruled by you.
Did never Philomel sing so sweet a note?
Did never flatterer tell so false a tale?
Speak now, Cordella. Make my joys at full, and drop down nectar from thy honey lips.
I cannot paint my duty forth in words. I hope my deeds shall make report for me. But look what love the child doth owe the father, the same to you I bear, my gracious lord.
Here is an answer answerless indeed. Were you my daughter, I should scarcely brook it.
Dost thou not blush, proud peacock as thou art, to make our father such a slight reply?
Why, how now, minion? Are you grown so proud? Doth our dear love make you thus peremptory? What, is your love become so small to us as that you scorn to tell us what it is? Do you love us as every child doth love their father? True indeed, as some who by disobedience short their father's days, and so would you. Some are so father sick that they make means to rid them from the world, and so would you. Some are indifferent, whether their aged parents live or die, and so are you. But didst thou know, proud girl, what care I had to foster thee to this? Ah, then thou wouldst say as thy sisters do, our life is less than love we owe to you.
Dear father, do not so mistake my words, nor my plain meaning be misconstrued. My tongue was never used to flattery.
You were not best say I flatter. If you do, my deeds shall show. I flatter not with you. I love my father better than thou canst.
The praise were great, spoke from another's mouth, but it should seem your neighbours dwell far off.
Nay, here is one that will confirm as much as she hath said, both for myself and her. I say thou dost not wish my father's good.
Dear father!
Peace, bastard imp, no issue of King Leir. I will not hear thee speak one tittle more. Call not me father, if thou love thy life, nor these thy sisters once presumed to name. Look for no help henceforth from me nor mine. Shift as thou wilt, and trust unto thyself. My kingdom will I divide equally twixt thy two sisters to their royal dower, and will bestow them worthy their deserts. This one, because thou shalt not have the hope to have a child's part in the time to come, I presently will dispossess myself, and set up these upon my princely throne.
I ever thought that pride would have a fall.
Plain dealing, sister, your beauty is so sheen, you need no dowry to make you be a queen.
Exeunt Leir, Gonorill, and Ragan.
Now whither, poor forsaken, shall I go, when mine own sisters triumph in my woe? But unto him which doth protect the just, in him will poor Cordella put her trust. These hands shall labour for to get my spending, and so I'll live until my days have ending.
Oh, how I grieve to see my lord thus fond, to dote so much upon vain flattering words. Ah, if he but with good advice had weighed the hidden tenure of her humble speech, reason to rage should not have given place, nor poor Cordella suffer such disgrace.
And the scene ends. That progressed quickly. Fascinating. You know, this is a private moment. You know, you've got the king, his daughters, one other close counsellor in the room. Nobody else is mentioned. There's no nobles. There's no lords. They may know it's going to happen, but this isn't some big open thing. And of course, Gonorill and Ragan are, because we know they're performing. They're so over the top. And there's a little bit of Gonorill that I just went, you know, jumping off the turret, and I'm sort of going, well, that's very Satan temptation-y, that. Really.
There was also the millstone round the neck, also from Gospel.
Yeah. And it's the fact that Cordella's reaction is simply just going, oh gosh, shut up, sissies. And she tries to pull it back, but it's too late because they're sniping at her as well. And the moment she's trying to say, "Dear father, no, I didn't mean it quite that bad," he tells her not to say another word. It's a really interesting how she just misjudges the scene because she doesn't know the game precisely that's being played by everybody else.
But the bickering between the three is pretty even-handed. I mean, there's no one patient Griselda amongst them. That thing about your neighbours, it would seem, live afar off is a brilliant riposte. It's so sarky.
And that's her downfall. She's not responding to the king and talking to him. She's too busy arguing with her sisters.
She doesn't know how to read the room at all.
But Leir's anger comes from nowhere. You know, she gets a couple of lines and he blows his top. You know, what's primed him to get so angry so quickly? I would find this a very difficult scene to play.
This isn't about love, it's about obedience.
Disappointment, isn't it?
It's about whether the daughter will consent to be married to whomever the father chooses.
Yeah, I mean,
That's not my point. He's gone from Sweet Philomel singing to screaming his head off in 4 lines.
But
isn't that because he had this, what he considered to be a foolproof plot to kind of box Cordella into agreeing to a marriage. And I mean, she has spectacularly trounced that. You know, he's been totally foxed by her reply because she doesn't take the bait at all. And so I think, does that fury not stem from his impotence, from the fact that his plan that he had all neatly down and was ready to execute has just been completely undermined and he's not been able to carry through? So it's like a comment on his character, because when he doesn't get his own way,
it's not just that. It's you know, the two sisters have, you know, played a blinder because they prepped. You know, they're so unctuous, they're so over the top, and I think Cordella's reaction to that and the way she has to say those her lines is a reaction to that. She's not reacting to the father, and so the level of contempt that's probably in her response is aimed at her sisters, and possibly even sarcasm. And then you get the additional sniping. It's not just Leir goes for them. Gonorill goes for her first, then Ragan goes for her next. It's a cascading family row. And he's asking, you know, he doesn't go to the total extreme until his second speech. He's pretty hard with her the first speech, but it's hurt, I think, with that. And so would you, and so would you, and so are you. It's a building, I think. It's still quick, but I think there are foothills, you know, handholds to work with.
I think we may have been warned that he is likely to behave a little less rationally than we fancied we would. Because his daughters, before we see the family together, refer to him his senseless senses. And the way that the nobles, with the exception of Skalliger, who may not be a noble, I don't know, pussyfoot round him, suggests that they have an expectation that he's losing it a bit. I mean, leaving aside the fact that one is by nature polite to the king, they all expect him to do something fairly daft.
But of course, it's unusual for somebody to be kind of really willingly thinking about laying down their power as well. So unless I've missed it and no one said it explicitly, apart from what Keith just figured out, perhaps that shows an awareness of my powers waning or my reasons waning. That's why this urgency is there, perhaps.
I think that's a very good point.
And, you know, the sisters do state that you know, he has extremities in love and hate. So it is prefixed earlier in the text. Alan, next.
Yeah, I was just wondering, with the reference in the early speech to his late queen, whether in fact she was the one who kept the two elder sisters in order. And basically what's happened is now she's no longer around to clip them around the ear if they get out of line. They're just making the most of their opportunities.
can I draw people's attention to Cordella's last couplet, which from a pampered youngest daughter and princess, is pretty radical. Hands shall labour for to get my spending, and so I'll live until my days have ending. I mean, this is a new woman.
Yes, she does go. She has quite a journey in the scene with not very much dialogue.
But I mean, that is not swooning in a corner.
No.
But I also think that possibly, so if she's his favourite daughter, she was allowed to act out and say certain things around him that the other two weren't. And so she probably didn't expect her comments about how the other two are suddenly sucking up so much.
She doesn't know the stakes.
Yeah,
They know the stakes.
probably...
She doesn't know. She hasn't been told. Liza, you're muted.
At the beginning, Helen made a good point that this is also about obedience, and obedience was meant to be part of the duty that a child of any gender owed to a parent. So Leir commands them to demonstrate their love to him. The two older sisters comply with that command, even though they're not being honest. They're showing obedience, and Cordelia does show love, but she doesn't show obedience.
And if you really want to see the most extreme form of that obey your father, the disobedient child is one to have a look at out for on the podcast, where the father at the end just goes, well, you've come back to the fold, child, you're screwed, bye.
There's another interesting thing. Early in the scene, I noticed Leir addresses Cordella as minion, which is an odd word. I'm sure I've come across it somewhere, possibly in a slightly later play by the dramatist we're not allowed to mention. Sorry, and in the sense of darling.
Yes, you are right that comes up there, but it would be interesting to look for... I wonder if it recurs in this play. I guess we'll see if it goes on.
If we think of minion as someone who's a useless hanger-on that we have in other, especially in history plays, other history plays, that might be that sort of connotation too. We do need to move forward, however, into the next scenes, and I think we'll run the next two scenes back to back. They're relatively short, and we'll see what goes on here as the narrative expands its canvas somewhat. So, scene 4, enter the Gallian king with Mumford and 3 nobles more.
Dissuade me not, my lords, I am resolved this next fair wind to sail for Brittany, in some disguise to see if flying fame be not too prodigal in the wondrous praise of these 3 nymphs, the daughters of King Leir. If present view do answer present praise, and eyes allow of what our ears have heard, and Venus stand auspicious to my vows, and fortune favour what I take in hand, I will return, seized as of as rich a prize as Jason when he won the golden fleece.
Heavens grant you may. The match were full of honour, and well beseeming the young Gallian king. I would your grace would favour me so much as make me partner of your pilgrimage. I long to see the gallant British dames, and feed mine eyes upon their rare perfections. For till I know the contrary, I'll say our dames in France are more fair than they.
Lord Mumford, you have saved me a labour in offering that which I did mean to ask, and I must willingly accept your company. Yet first I will enjoin you to observe some few conditions which I shall propose.
So that you do not tie mine eyes for looking after the amorous glances of fair dames, so that you do not tie my tongue from speaking, my lips from kissing when occasion serves, my hands from congress maybe, and my knees to bow to gallant girls, which were a task more hard than flesh and blood is able to endure. Command what else you please, I rest content.
To bind thee from a thing thou canst not leave were but a mean to make thee seek it more. And therefore speak, look, kiss, salute for me. In these myself I'm like to second thee. Now, hear thy task. I charge thee from the time that first we set sail for the British shore to use no words of dignity to me, but in the friendliest manner that you cast, make use of me as thy companion. For we will go disguised in palmer's weeds, that no man shall mistrust us what we are.
If that be all, I'll fit your turn, I warrant you. I am some kin to the Blunts, and I think the bluntest of all my kindred. Therefore, if I be too blunt with you, thank yourself for praying me to be so.
Thy pleasant company will make the way seem short. It resteth now that in my absence hence, I do commit the government to you, my trusty lords and faithful counsellors. Time cutteth off the rest I have to say. The wind blows fair, and I must needs away.
Heaven send your voyage to as good effect as we your land do purpose to protect.
And they exit straight into scene 5. Enter the King of Cornwall and his men booted and spurred, a riding wand and a letter in his hand.
But how far distant are we from the court?
Some 20 miles, my lords, or thereabouts.
It seemeth to me 20,000 miles, yet I hope to be there within this hour.
Then are you like to ride alone for me? I think my lord is weary of his life.
Sweet Gonorill, I long to see thy face, which has so kindly gratified my love.
And enter the King of Cambria, booted and spurred, and his man with a wand and letter.
Get a fresh horse, for by my soul I swear, I am past patience longer to forbear the wished sight of my beloved mistress, dear Ragan, stay and comfort of my life.
Now what in God's name doth my lord intend? He thinks he ne'er shall come at journey's end. I would he had old Daedalus' waxen wings, that he might fly, so I might stay behind. But ere we get to Troyonant, I see he will quite tire himself, his horse, and me.
Cornwall and Cambria look one upon the another, and start to see each other there.
Brother of Cambria, we greet you well, as one whom here we did expect.
Brother of Cornwall, met in happy time. I thought as much to have met with the Sultan of Persia as to have met you in this place, my lord. No doubt it is about some great affairs that makes you here so slenderly accompanied.
To say the truth, my lord, it is no less, and for your part some hasty wind of chance hath blown you hither upon the sudden?
My lord, to break off further circumstances, for at this time I cannot brook delays, tell you your reason, I will tell you mine.
In faith, content, and therefore to be brief, for I am sure my haste is great as yours, I am sent for to come unto King Leir, who by these present letters promiseth his eldest daughter, lovely Gonorill, to me in marriage, and for present dowry a moiety of half his regiment. The lady's love I long ago possessed, but until now I never had the father's.
You tell me wonders. Yet I will relate strange news, and henceforth we must brothers call. Witness these lines. His honourable age, being weary of the troubles of his crown, his princely daughter Ragan will bestow on me in marriage with half his signories, whom I would gladly have accepted of with the third part, her compliments are such.
If I have one half, and you have the other, then between us we must needs have the whole.
The whole? How mean you that, 'sblood? I hope we shall have 2 holes between us.
Why, the whole kingdom.
Ah, that's very true.
What then is left for his third daughter's dowry, lovely Cordella, whom the world admires?
'Tis very strange. I know not what to think, unless they mean to make a nun of her.
'Twere pity such a rare beauty should be hid within the compass of a cloister's wall. But howsoe'er, if Leir's words prove true, it will be good, my lord, for me and you.
Then let us haste all danger to prevent, for fear delays do alter his intent.
And they exit, and we'll pause there as the 3 potential sort of husbands, etc., have all had a little mini moment. Lots of really nice things. I love Cornwall's attempt at maths there. You have one half. I have the other half. Ooh. rude puns always nice. Troynovant is London. For those who do not know, again, they're all descendants of Brutus, first king of Britain, who came from Troy, straight out the ashes of Troy, and they call London the Troynovant. And it is conges, by the way, Simon. My hands from conges.
Oh, it was.
That is actually a word. So it's to do with, is it taking your leave of
yes.
It means
Congé.
Salutations in general.
Yeah.
Okay.
At this point, French congédier.
I thought it was in Congress, which maybe was somewhat presiding the whole.
Racing ahead a little.
Simon, you might have actually already said that in when we did Jack Straw, because I think it was actually a line of dialogue you might actually have.
Really?
It might not have been. I might be. It might have been another one of the lords.
Going back to the whole, is Cambria just very thick?
The impression is that they're both.
I mean,
I think he's just very rude.
Yeah, I see him being played by Brian Blessed.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to convey here.
I suspect actually they may be aristos and therefore not required to be bright.
True.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're a little early for that kind of aristocracy to be in place. But I love all this. They both arrive in very similar ways, and they turn around. It's there's lovely comedy business with these characters, which I'm liking a lot.
I did one. Oh,
sorry, go on, Sarah.
Oh, because I haven't read ahead. I did wonder for a moment when they first appeared together whether we were going to have an even broader comedy moment where one says, "I have come to marry the daughter of King Leir," and the other one says, "No, I have come to marry the daughter of King Leir," and there's like a little moment of confusion. But no, we didn't.
Then they're like, "Oh no, wait, there's two."
Yes. Yeah.
What about the other one? What about the other one? She must be becoming a nun.
One thought on doubling, actually, Robert. I think the two servants in there should be separate people, which would add to the comedic effect. That we got two retainers who are equally dim as their masters.
I love the servants there.
Yeah, I mean, they're lovely lines, but I think they would make more sense if you got effectively a servant with each, rather than one covering both.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah.
Servant 1, servant 2.
Yes, you get the feeling somebody's itching to write another monotony.
Yes, I mean, it's Cornwall's servant and Cambria's servant.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's one to adjust in the script. Lovely. Good point. Different people. Are the Gallian king that scene, because that's a slightly different tenor and the nature of who their relationship, Mumford rather. Any thoughts about that? Those who've done it, on those who are listening.
Could you not have found a more French name? I mean, Mumford must be the most English name in the world.
I'm thinking Mumford.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
He's related to the Blunts, though.
For a crap joke only.
He also
wouldn't be a play of the era without someone in a disguise somewhere.
Well, quite,
of course.
yes.
So you have to get
Palmer's a notice. Palmer's again.
Yeah, and you don't get histories without someone called Blunt. Or not English histories, anyway.
Yeah.
I have a feeling there's see, they've got thick aristos as well joke going on here. I sometimes wonder how much the King of France is really relishing being stuck on the road with his numpty. The old company will make the time pass so far.
Yes, they do seem mismatched, don't they? They seem, if he's deliberately blunt, whereas the Gallian king is much more Gallian,
smoothie.
Then that sort of works.
I'm wondering if that's setting up a whole kind of fool and king balance, of course, because the fool says the things that other people cannot without losing their heads. I
think he's a blunt noble, but lower status, possibly. Who knows?
We'll see.
We'll see.
It's going to be interesting if he adjusts the thou and the you. Because, I mean, the king is saying thou to him and he's saying you to the king. If they're going to be equal, then that's going to have to be sorted out later. Or people
That's how they'll be caught out.
Yeah. Okay, we will move forward. We've expanded the canvas. There's some fun characters and business occurring. It's all good fun so far. Scene 6, we're returning to Gonorill and Ragan, and various other people will be appearing too. So let's see if the B plot will collide now with the A plot. Enter Gonorill and Regan.
Sister, when did you see Cordella last? That pretty piece that thinks none good enough to speak to her because, Sir Reverence, she hath a little beauty extraordinary.
Since time my father warned her from his presence, I never saw her that I can remember. God give her joy of her surpassing beauty. I think her dowry will be small enough.
I have incensed my father so against her as he will never be reclaimed again.
I was not much behind to do the like.
Faith, sister, what moves you to bear her such goodwill?
In truth, I think the same that moveth you, because she doth surpass us both in beauty.
Beshrew your fingers, how right you can guess. I told you true, it cuts me to the heart.
But we will keep her low enough, I warrant, and clip her wings for mounting up too high.
Whoever hath her shall have a rich marriage of her.
She were right fit to make a parson's wife. For they, men say, do love fair women well, and many times do marry them with nothing.
With nothing? Marry, God forbid. Why, are there any such?
I mean no money.
Oh, I cry you mercy, I mistook you much. And she is far too stately for the church. She'll lay her husband's benefits on her back, even in one gown, if she may have her will.
I' faith, poor soul, I pity her a little. Would she were less fair or more fortunate. Well, I think I long until I see my Morgan, the gallant Prince of Cambria, here arrive.
And so do I, until the Cornwall king present himself to consummate my joys. Peace, here cometh my father.
And enter Leir, Perillus, and others.
Peace, good my lords, and sue not to reverse our censure, which is now irrevocable. We have dispatched letters of contract unto the kings of Cambria and of Cornwall. Our hand and seal will justify no less. Then do not so dishonour me, my lords, as to make shipwreck of our kingly word. I am as kind as is the pelican that kills itself to save her young ones' lives, and yet as jealous as the princely eagle that kills her young ones if they do but dazzle upon the radiant splendour of the sun. Within this 2 days I expect their coming.
Enter kings of Cornwall and Cambria.
But in good time. They are arrived already. This haste of yours, my lords, doth testify the fervent love you'll bear unto my daughters, and think yourselves as welcome to King Leir as ever Priam's children were to him.
My gracious lord, and father too, I hope, pardon, for I made no greater haste, but were my horse as swift as was my will, I long ere this had seen your majesty.
No other excuse of absence can I frame than what my brother hath informed your grace. For our undeserved welcome we do vow perpetually to rest at your command.
But you, sweet love, illustrious Gonorill, the regent and the sovereign of my soul, is Cornwall welcome to your excellency?
As welcome as Leander was to Hero, or brave Aeneas to the Carthage queen. So and more welcome is your grace to me.
Oh, may my fortune prove no worse than his, since heavens do know my fancy is as much. Dear Regan, say, if welcome unto thee, all welcomes else will little comfort me.
As gold is welcome to the covetous eye, as sleep is welcome to the traveller, as is fresh water to sea-beaten men, or moistened showers unto the parched ground. Or anything more welcomer than this, so and more welcome lovely Morgan is.
What resteth then, but that we consummate the celebration of these nuptial rites? My kingdom I do equally divide. Princes, draw lots, and take your chance as falls.
Then they draw lots.
These I resign as freely unto you, as erst by true succession they were mine. And here I do freely dispossess myself, and make you two my two true adopted heirs. Myself will sojourn with my son of Cornwall, and take me to my prayers and my beads. I know my daughter Ragan will be sorry, because I do not spend my days with her. Would I were able to be with both at once. They are the kindest girls in Christendom.
I have been silent all this while, my lord, to see if any worthier than myself would once have spoke in poor Cordella's cause. But love or fear ties silence to their tongues. Oh, hear me speak for her, my gracious lord, whose deeds have not deserved this ruthless doom, as thus to disinherit her of all.
Urge this no more, and if thou love thy life, I say she is no daughter, that doth scorn to tell her father how she loveth him. Whoever speaketh hereof to me again, I will esteem him for my mortal foe. Come, let us in to celebrate with joy the happy nuptials of these lovely pairs.
And they all exit except for Perillus left alone.
Ah, who so blind as they that will not see the near approach of their own misery? Poor lady, I extremely pity her, and whilst I live, each drop of my heart blood will I strain forth to do her any good.
And he exits. I'm not going to dwell too much here, except that in this scene it's really clear that Cornwall, Cambria, Ragan, and Gonorill, they're really gagging for it, aren't they? I mean, they're just panting to get off and get to the happy nuptials of these lovely pairs. It's interesting. The division of the kingdom is random. It's draw lots, and that's an interesting detail. I love.
There's only 2 lots to draw from. There are only 2 lots to draw from.
Well, he's got 2 deeds of gift, and he's saying, pick one, pick one, pick one.
Pick a card, any card.
Yeah.
The choice of 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can have. I don't know how they split the kingdom. Is it north, south, east, west? Diagonally. Who knows?
It makes no sense though, because Cambria, I assume, is Cumbria.
No, Wales.
Oh, it's Wales. Okay, and then Cornwall. Okay, so they're both kind of west. Okay, so you couldn't divide it like north-south. No. No,
and besides, in terms of division, the titles don't necessarily have land connections per se. Any additional thoughts about that little scenette?
This is a general thing.
Oh, sorry, there's David first.
General thing. Do we have a writer for this?
Nope.
I'm noticing not nearly as much classical allusion as in previous plays we've read.
We've had a Philomel, and that's about it, I think.
There's been 2 or 3 brief references, but certainly not at length as we've had elsewhere.
Yeah. And I think Philomel was described to describe Nightingale only, not the Philomel.
And some of those others, they're not so much classical references in so much as they're the ancestors of the characters on stage. So it's slightly different in terms of classical referencing as well. Keith,
it is quite possible, of course, that there's quite good evidence that plays of this period were frequently committee jobs.
Oh,
so
yes.
You get one bloke who's got the classical education can trot that out, another bloke who does the low humour, and another one who writes the long speeches for the costume change.
And especially with Queen's men's plays, where you get the impression that they let the clown write their own part as well. Which actually, so far, we haven't really got a very clear clown part yet, have we?
No. I do notice that the classical references are, in some of them, really quite sarcastic. I mean, to choose as exemplars of lovers, Leander, who drowned swimming across the Hellespont for the 2nd time in the day, silly prat. and Aeneas who walked out on Dido.
Yeah, that one went well. That one went well.
They're not good precedents to choose. One wonders who's being sarcastic. Is it the author or the speaker?
Mm. And again, also we have to be careful of thinking about classical references. In popular culture at the time, they pop up in random places, so they're not necessarily an indicator of classical educational learning. They might be just elements of stories that are available in more popular forms. So we have to be a little careful what we mean by that as well.
Incredibly horny poems by Marlowe.
Yeah. horny. Classical literature and horniness is all over the place, and these are considering that's a scene that's quite horny generally. It's quite fun. We do need to move forward. Time is moving on a pace, so I'm going to move into scene 7. I think yes. So we're back with the Gallian king. So enter the Gallian king and Mumford, disguised like pilgrims.
My lord, how do you brook this British air?
My lord, I told you of this foolish humour and found you to the contrary, you know.
Pardon me for once, my lord, I did forget.
My lord, again? Then let's have nothing else, and so be ta'en for spies, and then 'tis well.
Zoons! I could bite my tongue in two for anger. For God's sake, name yourself some proper name.
Call me Tresilius. I'll call thee Denapole.
Might I be made the monarch of the world, I could not hit upon these names, I swear.
Then call me Will. I'll call thee Jack.
Well, be it so, for I have well deserved to be called Jack.
Stand close. Here a British lady cometh.
Enter Cordella.
Fairer creature ne'er mine eyes beheld.
This is a day of joy unto my sisters, wherein they both are married unto kings. And I, by birth, as worthy as themselves, am turned into the world to seek my fortune. How may I blame the fickle queen of chance that maketh me a pattern of her power? A poor weak maid, whose imbecility is far unable to endure these brunts. O Father Leir, how dost thou wrong thy child, who always was obedient to thy will? But why accuse I fortune and my father? No, no, it is the pleasure of my God, and I do willingly embrace the rod.
It is no goddess, for she doth complain on fortune and kindness of her father.
These costly robes ill-fitting my estate I will exchange for other meaner habit.
Now, if I had a kingdom in my hands, I would exchange it for a milkmaid's smock and petticoats, that she and I might shift our clothes together.
I will betake me to my thread and needle, and earn my living with my fingers' ends.
Oh, brave! God willing, thou shalt have my custom. By sweet Saint Denis, here I sadly swear, for all the shirts and night gear that I wear.
I will profess and vow a maiden's life.
Then I protest, thou shalt not have my custom.
I can forbear no longer for to speak, for if I do, I think my heart will break.
Splud! Will, I hope you are not in love with my sempster.
I am in such a labyrinth of love, as I know not which way to get out.
You'll ne'er get out, unless you first get in.
I prithee, Jack, cross not my passions.
Prithee, it will, to her, and try her patience.
Thou fairest creature, whatsoe'er thou art, that ever any mortal eyes beheld, thou said to me, I have overheard thy woes, show the cause of these thy sad laments.
Ah, pilgrims, what avails to show the cause, when there's no means to find a remedy?
To utter grief doth ease a heart o'ercharged.
To touch a sore doth aggravate the pain.
The silly mouse, by virtue of her teeth, released the princely lion from the net.
Kind Palmer, which so much desires to hear the tragic tale of my unhappy youth, know this in brief. I am the hapless daughter of Leir, sometimes king of Brittany.
Why, who debars his honourable age from being still the king of Brittany?
None but himself has dispossessed himself, and given all his kingdom to the kings of Cornwall and of Cambria with my sisters.
Hath he given nothing to your lovely self?
Loved me not, and therefore gave me nothing, only because I could not flatter him. And in this day of triumph to my sisters doth fortune triumph in my overthrow.
Sweet lady, say there should come a king, as good as either of your sisters' husbands, to crave your love. Would you accept of him?
I do not mock with those in misery, nor do not think, though fortune have the power to spoil mine honour and debase my state, that she have any interest in my mind. For if the greatest monarch in the earth should sue to me in this extremity, except my heart could love and heart could like, better than any that I ever saw, his great estate no more should move my mind than mountains move by blast of every wind.
Think not, sweet nymph, 'tis holy Palmer's guise, to grieved souls fresh torments to devise. Therefore, in witness of my true intent, let heaven and earth bear record of my words. There is a young and lusty Gallian king, so like to me as I am to myself, that earnestly doth crave to have thy love, and join with thee in Hymen's sacred bonds.
The like to thee did ne'er these eyes behold. O live to add new torments to my grief, why didst thou thus entrap me unawares? Ah, Palmer, my estate doth not befit a kingly marriage, as the case now stands. Whilom when as I lived in honour's height, a prince perhaps might postulate my love. Now misery, dishonour, and disgrace hath lit on me, and quite reversed the case. Thy king will hold thee wise, if thou surcease the suit, whereas no dowry will ensue. Then be advised, Palmer, what to do. Cease for thy king, seek for thyself to woo.
Your birth's too high for any but a king.
My mind is low enough to love a Palmer, rather than any king upon the earth.
Oh, but you can never endure their life, which is so strait and full of penury.
Oh, yes, I can, and happy if I might. I'll hold thy Palmer staff within my hand, and think it is the sceptre of a queen. Sometime I'll set thy bonnet on my head, and think I wear a rich imperial crown. Sometime I'll help thee in thy holy prayers, and think I am with thee in paradise. Thus I'll mock fortune as she mocketh me, and never will my lovely choice repent, for having thee, I shall have all content.
'Twere sin to hold her longer in suspense, since that my soul hath vowed she shall be mine. Our dear Cordella, cordial to my heart, I am no Palmer, as I seem to be, but hither come in this unknown disguise, to view the admired beauty of those eyes. I am the king of Gallia, gentle maid, although thus slenderly accompanied, and yet thy vassal by imperious love, and sworn to serve thee everlastingly.
Whate'er you be, of high or low descent, all's one to me. I do request but this, that as I am, you will accept of me, and I will have you whatsoe'er you be. Yet well I know you come of royal race, I see such sparks of honour in your face.
Have Palmer's weeds such power to win fair ladies? Faith, then I hope the next that falls is mine. Upon condition I know worse might speed, I would forever wear a Palmer's weed. I like an honest and plain-dealing wench that swears without exception, I will have you. These foppets that know not whether to love a man or no, except they first go ask their mother's leave, by this hand I hate them 10 times worse than poison.
What resteth then our happiness to procure?
Faith, go to church to make the matter sure.
It shall be so, because the world shall say, King Leir's 3 daughters were medded in one day. The celebration of this happy chance we will defer until we come to France.
I like the wooing, that's not long a-doing. Well, for her sake I know what I know. I'll never marry whilst I live, except I have one of these British ladies. My humour is alienated from the maids of France.
And they exit. I think we've found at least one of our clowns, haven't we? Mumford has a suspicious gap, I think, tomorrow. So I'm suspecting I know who this he might be doubling. Sorry, I'm looking ahead. I shouldn't do that. That's a really fun scene. It's an interesting interpolation. I don't think this precise scene exists in any of the sources, so they've sort of interpolated something here.
Right.
So all this stuff about the disguising and the stuff. I love that the king comes up with some really crap fancy names, and he says, what? How about Will and Jack? Okay, that one.
It could have been worse from Sarah's point of view.
Yes.
Good.
No, I think that was that's a really lovely fun scene. There's a lot of really nice back and forth. I mean, Cordella sort of deciding what she's going to do next. She's got a bit of a plan.
It's so hard not to just laugh with the thing that was going on with the other two. It was like, no, yes, I will do this with my life. Yes, and then I will do that.
Yeah, you've got to keep straight face while Mumford's doing the funnies, haven't you?
But there is a possibility that Mumford actually mistakes what Cordella is saying. There are other people who live by the prick of their needle.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're not actually thinking of Pratchett and the Seamstress Guild, are you?
Yes, I am indeed. I am indeed.
That joke does come from a real thing.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Any other thoughts about that particular scene? We do need to move a little further forward. So
I was
quick
going to
thoughts.
say something about this not being in the history. The scene of the king as a beggar is a very common motif in ballad and in folk song. Some people say it goes back to James IV of Scotland, who went forth as a beggar.
There is
not
that...
in Green, he didn't.
No.
But in terms of folk music, he did.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it has a really nice fairy tale quality, this scene, again, doesn't it? It's really nice. I mean, the king accepts her without a dowry, and that's why I was just quickly checking what it says in various things. But this doesn't, I haven't found. It may exist somewhere, I don't know, but I haven't found it.
You find it in a number of folk songs.
Yeah. Of
someone coming out, a man turning up at the house, a beggar, wanting to stay the night, and then running off with the daughter, and the daughter saying she will be a beggar's wife, and not marrying a king or a lord. This, I can point to at least 5 folk songs with that story in.
Yep. Excellent. Other thoughts?
It's quite sophisticated in that, unlike plays from about 20 years earlier, you don't get everything being said 3 times, one for each block of the audience. You wait until you've got the clowns in to recapitulate the plot, in case anybody missed it the first time. It's a much more modern feeling piece of writing than things from the 70s and 60s.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but as we're diving into the 60s and 70s at the moment, and they're coming across quite well, actually. I haven't noticed that as a significant structural issue, but we shall see. We shall see. I will bear that. I will remember that, sir. I will remember that. Other thoughts? Okay, next scene is a solo speech by Perillus. Enter Perillus solus.
The king hath dispossessed himself of all, those to advance which scarce will give him thanks. His youngest daughter he hath turned away, and no man knows what is become of her. He sojourns now in Cornwall with the eldest, who flattered him until she did obtain that at his hands which now she doth possess. And now she sees he hath no more to give, it grieves her heart to see her father live. Oh, whom should man trust in this wicked age, when children thus against their parents rage? But he, the mirror of mild patience, puts up all wrongs and never gives reply. Yet shames she not in most opprobrious sort to call him fool and dotard to his face, and sets her parasites of purpose oft in scoffing wise to offer him disgrace. O iron age, O times, O monstrous viled when parents are condemned of the child. His pension she hath restrained from him, and will ere long the other half, I fear. For she thinks nothing is bestowed in vain, but that which doth her father's life maintain. Trust not alliance, but trust strangers rather, since daughters prove disloyal to the father. Well, I will counsel him the best I can. Would I were able to redress his wrong. Yet what I can, unto my utmost power, he shall be sure of to the latest hour.
So we have this nice little scene. Just while you've been out, this is the plot. This is what's been happening plot-wise. It's nice. It actually goes back to something that was going on in scene 6 when the king enters and he's going, cease, my good lords, and sue not to reverse our censure. And you get that impression, even though it's not addressed at Perillus. There are no other lords named in that scene. He's the only one there. He's the only one who makes complaint at the end. So his progression here is signposted. We know he's worried about the state of the kingdom. In fact, the only one really who is within the surviving court. Things are not going well. Any other thoughts?
Yes, he's taking it well, though. He's the mirror of mild patience. He puts up with wrongs and never gives reply. So he's taking it on the chin.
Yeah, the king is suddenly being set up as a sympathetic figure, whereas before he wasn't particularly. He was just, well, you know what he was, you were there. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this carries on. It's a rather swift turn.
I don't know that the king is set up as an unsympathetic figure. I mean, I think there is the sense, yes, he does, that there are other forces helping to set himself up against his daughters.
The mild patience, though, that he is that this speech mentions is not something we've seen before from him.
No. And just to go back, rewinding back to scene 3, when he had that soliloquy about how much he loved his children. I mean, I found that really interesting, because soliloquies, people tell the truth in soliloquies. So clearly he actually believes this. He believes that he, dotes upon his children. And yet it's perfectly obvious from the previous scene that he's prepared to manipulate them, sacrifice them to his, his convenience or what he believes to be, the best thing. So it's like, I don't know, he has his delusion in terms of how much he loves his daughters is set up quite early on. I don't find him sympathetic at all. I find him deeply delusional and very narcissistic. So I kind of agree with Liza, actually. It's like this, where's this come from all of a sudden?
No, I don't see that. His aim in the whole trick, the whole plan, was to get Cordelia married to the man he thought she ought to marry. And in early modern terms, that is not showing lack of love.
It's a very manipulative way to do it, though.
Yes, but that's the nature of the stories. That I don't think the player's pitching him as an unsympathetic character. I think he's a misguided character.
Also, in the natural order of things, he is still the rightful king. So we are, by early modern terms, we should be sympathetic to him, because that's just how it should be.
I mean, if he was threatening to lock her up and starve her and beat her into accepting his choice, we could see that as, the patriarchy and bad. But he's in fact trying to trick her into agreeing.
And then when she won't be tricked, he banishes her.
Yes. Well, he gets miffed.
Oh, well, that's okay then.
Anyway, I feel
Fair
this might
enough,
be a circular
fair enough.
argument for the moment.
Yeah, it is.
We will
It
read
is.
scene 9 and scene 10 sequentially, and then we will stop and go as we go into extra time because we're running. We're approaching the hour. So, scene 9: enter Gonorill, and we haven't seen him for a while. Skalliger.
I prithee, Skalliger, tell me that thou think'st. Could any woman of our dignity endure such quips and peremptory taunts as I do daily from my doting father? Doth not suffice that I him keep of arms, who is not able for to keep himself. But as it he were our better, he should think to check and snap me up at every word. I cannot make me a new-fashioned gown and set it forth with more than common cost, but his old doting, doltish, withered wit is sure to give a senseless check for it. I cannot make a banquet extraordinary to grace myself and spread my name abroad, but he, old fool, is captious by and by, and saith the cost would well suffice for twice. Judge then, I pray, what reason is that I should stand alone charged with his vain expense, and that my sister Ragan should go free, to whom he gave as much as unto me? I prithee, Skalliger, tell me if thou know by any means to rid me of this woe.
Your many favours still bestowed on me bind me in duty to advise your grace how you may soonest remedy this ill. The large allowance which he hath from you is that which makes him so forget himself. Therefore abridge it half, and you shall see that having less he will more thankful be. For why abundance maketh us forget the fountains whence the benefits do spring.
Well, Skalliger, for thy kind advice herein I will not be ungrateful if I live. I have restrained half his portion already, and I will presently restrain the other, that having no means to relieve himself, he may go seek elsewhere for better help.
And exit Gonorill.
Go, viperous woman, shame to all thy sex. The heavens no doubt will punish thee for this, and me, a villain that to curry favour hath given the daughter counsel against her father. But us the world doth this experience give, that he that cannot flatter cannot live.
And Skalliger exits scene 10. Enter the King of Cornwall, Leir, Perillus, and nobles.
Father, what aileth you to be so sad? Methinks you frolic not as you were wont.
The nearer we do grow unto our graves, the less we do delight in worldly joys.
But if a man can frame himself to mirth, it is a mean for to prolong his life.
Then welcome sorrow, Leir's only friend, who doth desire his troubled days had end.
Comfort yourself, father. Here comes your daughter, who will give much grief, I know, to see you sad.
Enter Gonorill.
But more doth grieve, I fear, to see me live.
My Gonorill, you come in wished time to put your father from these pensive dumps. In faith, I fear that all things go not well.
What, do you fear that I have angered him? Hath he complained of me to my lord? I'll provide him a piece of bread and cheese, for in a time he'll practice nothing else than carry tales from one unto another. 'Tis all his practice for to kindle strife twixt you, my lord, and me, your loving wife. That I will take an order, if I can, to cease the effect where first the cause began.
Sweet, be not angry in a partial cause. He ne'er complained of thee in all his life. Father, you must not weigh a woman's words.
Alas, not I. Poor soul, she breeds young bones, and that is it makes her so touchy, sure.
What, breeds young bones already? You will make an honest woman of me then, belike. O vile old wretch! Whoever heard the like that seeketh thus his own child to defame?
I cannot stay to hear this discord sound.
And exit Cornwall.
For anyone that loves your company, you may go pack and seek some other place to sow the seed of discord and disgrace.
And Gonorill exits too.
Thus, say or do the best that e'er I can. 'Tis wrested straight into another sense. This punishment my heavy sins deserve, and more than this 10,000,000 times. Else aged Leir them could never find cruel to him to whom he hath been kind. Why do I overlive myself to see the course of nature quite reversed in me? Ah, gentle death, if ever any wight did wish thy presence with a perfect zeal, then come, I pray thee, even with all my heart, and end my sorrows with thy fatal dart.
And he weeps.
Ah, do not so disconsolate yourself, nor dew your aged cheeks with wasting tears.
What man art thou that takest any pity upon the worthless state of old Leir?
One who doth bear as great a share of grief as it were my dearest father's case.
Ah, good my friend, how ill art thou advised for to consort with miserable men. Go learn to flatter, where thou mayest in time get favour mongst the mighty, and so climb. For now I am so poor and full of want, as that I ne'er can recompense thy love.
What's got by flattery doth not long endure, and men in favour live not most secure. My conscience tells me, if I should forsake you, I were the hatefullest excrement on the earth, which well do know in course of former time, how good my lord hath been to me and mine.
Did I e'er raise thee higher than the rest of all thy ancestors which were before?
I ne'er did seek it, but by your good grace I still enjoyed my own with quietness.
Did I e'er give thee living to increase the due revenues which thy father left?
I had enough, my lord, and having that, what should you need to give me any more?
Ugh. Did I ever dispossess myself and give thee half my kingdom in goodwill?
Alas, my lord, there were no reason why you should have such a thought to give it me.
Nay, if thou talk of reason, then be mute. For with good reason I can thee confute, if they, which first by nature's sacred law, do owe to me the tribute of their lives, if they to whom I always have been kind and bountiful beyond comparison, if they for whom I have undone myself and brought my age unto this extreme want do now reject, condemn, despise, abhor me, what reason moveth thee to sorrow for me?
Where reason fails, let tears confirm my love, and speak how much your passions do me move. Oh, good my lord, condemn not all for one. You have 2 daughters left to whom I know you shall be welcome if you please to go.
Oh, how thy words add sorrow to my soul, to think of my unkindness to Cordella, whom causeless I did dispossess of all, upon the unkind suggestions of her sisters. And for her sake I think this heavy doom is fallen on me, and not without desert. Yet unto Ragan was I always kind, and gave to her the half of all I had. It may be, if I should to her repair, she would be kinder, and entreat me fair.
No doubt she would, and practice ere it be long, by force of arms for to redress your wrong.
Well, since thou dost advise me for to go, I am resolved to try the worst of woe.
And exit Leir and Perillus off to Ragan, but that is something we will find out more about tomorrow. I think we may have a t-shirt line here. My conscience tells me if I should forsake you, I were the hatefulest excrement of the earth. Is something ridiculously fun about early modern people saying slightly rude things. If that's not excessively rude. It's a really, there's lots of things in that I'm finding really interesting, and it's sort of the state of Leir. It's been spoken about by Perillus, spoken about another way by Gonorill, then Leir talking to Cornwall, the argument that then ensues, the exit of Gonorill and Cornwall there. it's a really interesting little sequence. Thoughts from the room? I don't quite know how to start with that one. Keith, you're muted if you're trying to say something.
There we go. It's very much a family play, not a political one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Cornwall's parting shot, I cannot stay to hear this discord sound. He's not the most resilient or imaginative of creatures, is he?
No.
Or perhaps he just comes from a family where they're not always sniping at each other.
Yeah, they're always arguing in this family. What's wrong with everyone? And it's this stuff, she breeds young bones, and this makes her too touchy. Sure. I mean that, and the reaction that gets from Gonorill and Cornwall, I find really interesting. I'm thoughts about that.
Well, presumably they are married.
Yeah, that's what I'm finding odd about this. I'm not sure what.
Is it not? Is he not basically saying, "Oh, you're hormonal, dear, so obviously you're going to be cross with me"? I felt that that's certainly how she took it. Like she took it as an insult, like him basically dismissing her because, oh well, she's hormonal, so that's what you would say today. Like, oh, don't pay any attention to her. And she's like,
It's strange. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, Helen, then Liza.
He's actually saying she's pregnant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, in any early modern scenario, a young wife with a husband would be absolutely not a thing you would get upset about.
Yeah, that's what I'm finding quite odd. Is this a very artificial argument from Gonorill? Or Liza?
The question is, how much time has elapsed since between the first scene, which was her wedding day, and this? Perillus' speech indicates that maybe, a certain amount of time, enough time has elapsed for Leir to move to Cornwall and for Gonorill to become tired of him. The only way I can think that Gonorill would take offense at this and think of herself as being defamed is if she were somehow able to assume that Leir was implying that she was pregnant when she was married. I don't know how long the Elizabethans thought a pregnancy lasted. It's possible they only would date it from when it started to show. But then I'd have to look into some science history to look on that.
I was wondering about that.
Tamara,
I was wondering if that's the same sister, because I kind of lost track, but is that the same sister who said she's with child until...
No, it's the other one.
That's the other one.
Gonorill swore by her virginity in the first scene.
So she wasn't the one who was alluding to a pregnancy early on, because then that would have been consistent, and then we could have said, oh, he's making fun of the fact that she was clearly pregnant before they were married.
Well, we also don't know if Ragan was actually pregnant or just making sort of allusions and jokes about it.
Yeah. It's not really. I'm just wondering whether it has a connection with what Gonorill and Skalliger are talking about before, whether there's policy in this, and their little discussion. Scene 9, it's a short little plotting scene where he does that thing of, hello, I'm a villain. If anyone at home was in any doubt by this point in the play, me, a villain.
Green line cape supplied.
Yeah. And he's not impressed with Gonorill, or in fact anyone really. He that cannot flatter cannot live, which is following on from effectively the situation he helped manipulate and create at the beginning of the play. He did sort of sow the seeds of discord here.
Yeah. Coming back to the point of the lapse of time between the wedding and this, in terms of the pregnancy, yes, okay, you're probably talking about a couple of months. I think in terms of her attitude to him, a couple of minutes was probably enough, but she's got what she wants, now he can bugger off.
Yeah, it's... sorry, who's...
Sorry, I was just going to
Pamela.
say, you know, when you get to the stage with someone and you cannot bear anything they say, so it's not necessarily what they say, it's just the fact that they're breathing is what's driving you crazy. And I kind of get the impression that she's at that stage and she's just like, get the feck away from me. I never want to see you again. Leave me alone.
Yeah. I'd say there might be some policy to it as well. Is, you know, it's just simply that's what they're doing. She's doing. She's going to drive him away. I mean, Cornwall is not a willing partner in this. I mean, the poor man, you know, clearly can't cope with conflict, can he?
Yeah, it's interesting that he's not in her confidence.
Is it also possible that she married him because she wanted to get half the kingdom? And now they're not actually sleeping together at all, so she's very sure that she's not pregnant because she married him, she got the kingdom, and she's saying, what, you think I'm pregnant already? Don't be ridiculous.
She did say she loved him.
Well,
yeah.
Wasn't there that... Sorry.
Yeah, no, Simon, go.
I was going to say, wasn't there that reference very early on where she'd said something about marrying anyone here in her shirt, which I took to be somebody who even wasn't ready, anyone, just so I can get, and I wonder if that is so I can get my hands on the kingdom, rather than it was, because we were all talking about she's very horny, which you said in one of the previous scenes, but even then when they're scheming and thinking about it, I'm wondering if that's maybe that leads on to what you've just said actually earlier.
Well, she says it in the context of, I'd rather marry any man in a shirt rather than have Cordelia marry before me and thereby gain all the privileges of a married sister.
There we are.
So yeah, it would feed in.
Yeah.
And that final scene with Perillus and Leir, I mean, it's I mean, Perillus and Leir yourselves. I mean, how are you feeling with that thing? Lear's there alone weeping. You know, and Perillus, you know, comes and talks to him. What's going on there?
After you, Leir.
Well, I guess it's showing that there's still someone on Leir's side, isn't there? That, you know, Perillus is his kind of loyal compatriot throughout everything, and even though Leir hasn't taken his advice thus far, perhaps maybe now he will.
But also strange that Perillus doesn't really seem to catch on that Regan's going to be just as bad. Which is odd.
Blind faith.
Well, you know, he's got an open, honest face, Perillus. He may not realise, you know, that everyone's going to turn against them.
But we don't know that.
No, we don't. We don't.
I mean, Ragan may be exactly the opposite of Gonorill.
Though, to be fair, we've got quite a lot of evidence that she won't.
Yeah, true.
I mean, that would be one hell of a vault face for next time. So we're about a third of the way through the play. You know, it is a real family drama. There's very little mention of, you know, very few scenes with nobles in. You know, all of the stuff to do with Leir and his daughters it tends to be a private thing. It may have been debated with other lords at the very top of the play. Which is where the villain Skalliger Scaramanga manages to get his oar in and sort of manipulate to some degree where this is going. He knows how, you know, that connection with the vice figure from earlier does seem to be there, just in the teensy little bit there. So yeah, how do we feel about the play so far? The first third. We're very much into final thoughts now, so I'll go around the room. So anyone who wants to start off with their final thoughts?
I'll go.
Go, Simon.
Yeah, I think as Key said a couple of times, I like the fact that it's just kind of to the point here and there. It's not too flowery, you know. I always say that about a lot of the plays we see. For me, it feels quite kind of ruthless to the point in terms of it being a human drama as much as anything else. And I like the fact that we don't have to worry about kind of courtly behaviour too much. For me, it's a scroll turner.
Oh yeah, I like that. Yes. Alan, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly moves at a reasonable pace, without too much flower. The language is direct, and there's, as has been commented, there's not the excess of classical references that we've seen in one of the other pieces we've done.
Sarah, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I like the fact that it's a family drama. That's kind of refreshing. And I like the fairy tale aspects of it. That scene where the king meets Cordella, that reminded me of so many different fairy tales. I really liked that scene because it sort of gave Cordella a bit of agency. And I'm hoping we're going to see more of her, actually. I mean, I don't know how this play is structured because I haven't read ahead. So, but I hope she actually gets to be. You know, I'm assuming she is going to turn out to be the heroine, but I don't know for certain. And even if she does, it doesn't necessarily mean she's going to get much dialogue. You know, so I'm really hoping she does because I want to see. I thought she was really well written just in that little scene, and I want to see more of her.
Excellent. More for Cordella for the future. Tamara.
I want to pick up on the fairy tale aspect because I did in parts feel like we were reading a Grimm's fairy tale, which I really enjoyed. But it's definitely, it feels like a folk/fairy tale rather than a history play, which we're saying is, and that's really interesting. Also, I think the other two sisters also have agency in this play a lot more than we might be used to, especially since, I mean, Green used to set up girls with agency and then put them down, so I'm kind of hoping that doesn't happen here. But as much as they're villains, the other two sisters also have a lot of agency. They're really active. All the female characters are really active, and I really like that about this play.
Yeah, but if it's not by Green, they're not going to create a fight scene, are they?
There is
that. One fight scene maketh not a part. Victoria, thoughts?
I think it's quite interesting, kind of the theme of children looking after their aging parents and the responsibilities on them. And some of the things that Gonorill is saying, although obviously we're not supposed to be warming to her kind of caring ways, when she's saying, oh, he lives with me and then he criticises me and I'm feeding him and he's always saying I spend too much on this and I do that. And it reminds me of other much more modern plays where people are stuck in a house with their parents and about to literally kill them. But I spoke to my mother last week and I said, oh, the garden centre's opened and I bought a rhubarb crown, £6.50, and now I can grow rhubarb. £6.50? Should you be spending £6.50 on rhubarb? Like, oh, okay, mother, okay. And I quite like the sort of human aspect to them and all their
Speaking, so we're talking about human. The one who declares themselves a villain, Keith.
Yes, interesting. Skalliger, small part, but the only person who ever explains why he does what he does. Usually, well, I've got to, because if I haven't gone find somebody's coattails to hang on, I starve. Which is an interesting reflection. It strikes me two things. One, there's not much emotionalizing. Leir is given the time to feel sorry for himself. The rest just are in a state. The sisters are jealous, and you take that for granted. It needs to be cracked on at a wee fair pace, doesn't it, in order to give Leir the entitlement to sit in a puddle in the middle of the stage, less than a third of the way through the play. And there's lots to distract people from what's going on. I noticed the language is all very open air. The words used are intended to be belted across an inn-yard. There's very little private, personal stuff. There's very little whispering. So obviously it's intended to keep churning round the stage in a very exciting sort of whirlpool of a way.
Because it is not a short play. I mean, we're doing it over 3 sessions. You know, it is one of the longer plays from this period. You know, a lot of it's longer than any of the Greens we've done, which are all about the same time. So you know, it's 22 or so thousand words. So it's not short. Liza, final thoughts?
Well, I take both Keith's note about pace and Alan's earlier point about the language being very direct. It's less flowery than some plays of its era, but a lot of the verse still feels very static. It's characters who come on and announce who they are and what they feel and what they're going to do. You got to find your speedboat path through those still waters. Basically I'm also keeping an eye on the clowns. Skalliger is very Vice-like, and Mumford, well, I'm here for Mumford, basically. Every epic needs a Han Solo.
Yes. Pamela as Leir, have I come to you yet?
No, you haven't.
Yeah, final thought.
Final thought. Okay, I was just going to go on the Mumford thing. I was really enjoying that the scenes were broken up with that, and Mumford's final talk about how British women were now for him because, they just were better than everybody else. I quite enjoyed that. So final.
Because he thinks they're easier.
Yeah. And
than
more
the French.
beautiful. Yeah.
Helen, final thought.
It seems very slender. It's very direct, it's very easy to follow, but it doesn't seem to have much thickness and quality. I don't know. It's not that I'm missing the classical references. But that just doesn't. It seems thin. That's the word I'm after. It seems somehow thin. There's quite a lot of natural history references. And being early modern ones, they're all wrong. But they're good. They're good, which we haven't, they sort of skitter past and you don't notice them.
It's true, the pelican, I don't think I've ever, Yeah,
I'm sure there's something similar I've seen somewhere else. I can't remember about.
Well, the pelican in its piety was a meme.
Yeah.
It's actually a heraldic technical term.
Yeah.
But the pelican in its piety wounding its breast with its bill.
Yes, it's supposed to feed its young its own flesh and blood, and that's also a religious metaphor, and you see stone pelicans in reliefs on churches.
Yeah. Right. Well, we've gone around. I've thoroughly enjoyed it so far. I think I'm not worried about any issues of potential thinness. I think there's a lot of meat here in terms of actually playing around with it in a rehearsal room. Actually, there's still so much to do that I'd like to come back to. I'm going to disappoint everyone that I'm afraid Mumford does not return tomorrow, but there might be a good reason why Mumford does not return tomorrow, but I believe Mumford does return later on in the play. So there might be a good reason for this.
Skalliger, on the other hand, vanishes without explanation.
Yes, vanishes without.
Spoilers.
But
got a job with another theatre company.
Yes, but also it's the fact that there aren't that many characters full stop in this play. I mean, actually, there isn't that much doubling to do with parts, and you could get this down to quite a small company, and that is always something that makes me go, and that's something about the Queen's Men repertoire that seems quite good for that kind of Tory thing. So I'm quite looking forward to getting to grips with the next 2/3. That's it for us today. Unless anyone has any desperate final thoughts, we're going to go into housekeeping in just a moment. But otherwise, it's goodbye from everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.